On a warm summer evening, in a quiet suburban neighborhood that prided itself on safety, something truly terrifying occurred. What began as a casual stroll ended in a scene of unimaginable horror. A body, discovered deep in the bushes, bore harrowing evidence of a savage, prolonged attack. Bruises, lacerations, and signs of a desperate struggle painted a picture of violence so brutal it left the community in shock. Forensic experts later concluded that death had not come swiftly but painfully in a storm of rage and cruelty. What could drive someone to such inhumanity? Investigators asked this question repeatedly as they painstakingly pieced together a timeline of faint, ominous clues. This wasn't just a murder case. It was a tragedy that left a permanent scar on the town's sense of security. At approximately 8:20 p.m., a jogging couple encountered Dog on a secluded trail. The dog was alone, her leash dragging behind her, and she seemed deeply agitated. Dog's erratic movements, darting back and forth, appeared desperate, as if she were urging them to follow. Unease crept over the couple as they decided to trail the frantic animal. Dog led them into a shadowy thicket. What lay before them would become a nightmare etched into their minds. In a blood-soaked ravine was the lifeless form of a young woman. Shaken to their core, the couple immediately contacted the authorities. The area quickly swarmed with law enforcement, their flashlights casting unsettling shadows on the grim scene. By the time April's family arrived, the site had been cordoned off, police scouring every inch for signs of what had occurred. April Millsap was born on January 18, 1998, in the small town of Armada, Michigan, USA. From a young age, April was known for her cheerful personality and kind heart, which made her a beloved member of her community. She grew up in a loving family and shared a close bond with her mother, Jennifer Millsap, who described her as a bright and thoughtful child. When she was 6 years old, her parents divorced, leading her father to enter into a relationship with a man named David. April and her stepfather quickly developed a warm and harmonious relationship, providing her with an extended family that enriched her life. By the age of 16, April had already cultivated a sense of independence, often walking her dog Penny alone. While she cherished her time with friends, she remained deeply connected to her family, balancing her social life with familial bonds. April was also in a romantic relationship with Austin, a year her senior, whom she had met at school. Their relationship had blossomed over the past year, adding another layer of happiness to her life. In 2014, Armada was a tight-knit community with a population of approximately 1,700 residents. Known for its safety and ideal environment for families, everyone in the town knew each other by name and face. The place turned out to be safe, ideal for a family to live and raise children. However, as life experience shows, such circumstances make places like this very attractive to criminals. Here, they strike rarely, but it causes real panic. July 24, 2014, marked a day when summer vacation was in full bloom. On this particular day, April Millsap had no grand plans or special gatherings on her agenda. Instead, she opted to relish a leisurely day at home. She slept in until noon, savoring the unhurried pace that summer afforded her, and spent the afternoon immersed in her computer activities. She chatted with friends, scrolled through various websites, and indulged in her favorite video games. It was a day that seemed as ordinary as any other, with nothing out of the ordinary on the horizon. As the evening approached, around 6 p.m., April decided it was time for her daily walk with Penny. Penny, her loyal and spirited canine companion, was a constant source of joy in her life. These walks were more than just routine. They were cherished moments that allowed April to connect with nature, clear her mind, and appreciate the simple beauty of Armada. She chose one of her usual paths, a well-trodden trail that offered both familiarity and comfort. Typically, these walks lasted about an hour, and Jennifer had every reason to feel secure, knowing April's consistent schedule. However, as time passed without April's return, Jennifer began to feel a growing sense of unease. By 7:30 p.m., when April had yet to come back home, Jennifer's concern deepened. She attempted to reach her daughter's phone, but the calls were met with silence, redirecting straight to voicemail. Frustrated and worried, Jennifer sent several text messages but received no response. The creeping anxiety intensified, leaving her increasingly troubled. By 8 p.m., Jennifer was beginning to panic. She called April's boyfriend, Austin, hoping that perhaps they had met up spontaneously. To her dismay, Austin said he hadn't seen April all day. They had only exchanged messages online earlier. Alarmed by Jennifer's tone, Austin offered to help and arrived at the Millsap residence shortly after, accompanied by a friend. When Austin mentioned a strange message he had received from April, Jennifer's anxiety turned to outright fear. Austin revealed that at 6:28 p.m., just 40 minutes after April had left for her walk, she had sent him a chilling message. "Someone tried to kidnap me." He explained that he hadn't seen the message immediately, claiming it was delayed due to poor network coverage. Once he saw it, he hurried over to look for her, but his search had yielded no results. Jennifer immediately called her husband, David, who was at work. The urgency in her voice spurred him into action. He rushed home to join the search. Together, David, Jennifer, Austin, and his friend fanned out across the neighborhood, retracing the routes April often took. They knew the trails she loved, the quiet paths where she found solace. Jennifer also called the police, pleading for their assistance. The authorities, though limited in resources, joined the search with a sense of urgency. Armada was a small, tight-knit community where violent crimes were almost unheard of. The disappearance of a teenager under such mysterious circumstances was deeply unsettling. Around 8:20 p.m., a couple jogging on one of the trails encountered Penny. The dog was alone, her leash trailing behind her. Penny was frantic, running back and forth as if trying to lead them somewhere. Concerned, the couple followed the dog. Penny darted into a dense thicket, and what they discovered next would haunt them forever. Lying in a bloody ravine, partially hidden by the undergrowth, was the lifeless body of a woman. The sight was devastating. The woman's clothing was disheveled, and the area around her was stained with blood. The couple immediately contacted the authorities. By the time April's family arrived, the scene was already cordoned off, and law enforcement officers were combing through the area for clues. Jennifer and David's worst fears were confirmed when they identified the body as their daughter's. The grief was overwhelming. The local law enforcement agencies swiftly recognized that they were ill-prepared to handle a case of such magnitude. Armada, a small town with a population of merely 1,700 residents, was renowned for its peacefulness, where criminal activities rarely escalated beyond minor thefts. The town's modest police force, consisting of just 2 officers, lacked both the experience and the resources necessary to investigate a violent homicide. Acknowledging the intricate nature of the situation, the sheriff promptly sought assistance from county authorities and state investigators. Additionally, the FBI was enlisted to provide specialized expertise and advanced technological support. The ensuing investigation uncovered that April had been subjected to a brutal attack. Evidence at the scene suggested a struggle. April had fiercely resisted her assailant. Nevertheless, the sheer brutality of the crime was beyond anything the investigators had anticipated. Forensic specialists began the meticulous collection of evidence, while detectives dedicated themselves to reconstructing the sequence of events leading up to April's tragic death. The discovery of her lifeless body sent shockwaves through the community, obliterating the long-held sense of security that Armada's residents had cherished. In a more detailed examination of the crime scene, investigators found April at the base of a ravine, lying on her back amidst thick, overgrown vegetation. Her shoes had been forcibly removed and discarded several meters away from her body, a grim indication that her final moments were filled with fear and violence. Both her clothing and underwear were pulled down, initially suggesting a potential sexual motive behind the crime. However, comprehensive forensic analysis determined that April had not been sexually assaulted. This revelation led detectives to theorize that the perpetrator might have intended to commit such an act, but was thwarted by April's fierce resistance, or perhaps an unforeseen interruption, such as the presence of her dog or a bystander. Regardless of the motive, the crime was shockingly violent. April exhibited numerous bruises across her body, with significant defensive wounds on her arms and hands, highlighting her courageous attempts to protect herself. Her face was severely disfigured, with investigators describing it as crushed. The coroner documented at least 48 distinct injuries, primarily concentrated on her face and neck. Her body was covered in clotted blood, providing stark evidence of the prolonged and savage nature of the assault. In a particularly chilling finding, The coroner detected traces of neck compression. However, these did not align with the typical patterns of strangulation by hand or with an external object. Further analysis revealed unusual impressions on her face and neck, which were identified as shoe tread patterns. The forensic conclusion was horrifying. April had been trampled to death. Her attacker had stomped on her with the sole of a large sneaker, employing it as a weapon. The brutality was appalling, with the coroner estimating that the assault lasted over 10 minutes. April endured agonizing pain in her final moments. Based on the characteristics of the tread marks, detectives inferred that the perpetrator was likely a tall, physically imposing man. However, the extreme violence suggested something more sinister, perhaps driven by rage or cold-blooded cruelty that surpassed the typical motives seen in random acts of violence. April's face was so severely damaged that identifying her by physical features was impossible. This realization left her loved ones, especially her mother, Jennifer, devastated and engulfed in immeasurable grief. The investigation commenced promptly, focusing initially on those closest to April. Her parents, stepfather, boyfriend Austin, and even Austin's friend was brought in for questioning at the police station. Detectives aimed to construct a detailed timeline of events and identify any possible motives. Both April's biological father and her stepfather were swiftly eliminated as suspects. However, suspicions soon intensified around her boyfriend, Austin. Detectives became increasingly wary when Austin described his recent relationship with April as strained. He admitted that they had been arguing frequently, and their relationship was nearing a breaking point. Additionally, Austin disclosed that they had quarreled shortly before April's murder. While Austin's candor might have been an attempt to demonstrate his openness, it inadvertently painted him as a person with a potential motive. The discovery of a chilling message from April to Austin heightened the scrutiny on him. April had sent Austin a text shortly before her death saying, "Someone tried to kidnap me." Shockingly, Austin admitted that he had not immediately reported the message to anyone, nor had he contacted the police. Instead, he claimed that he only went out to search for her himself after finally seeing the message. His explanation for the delay was that the message had arrived late due to poor network connectivity. To detectives, Austin's actions seemed unusually indifferent. His response to such a grave message appeared sluggish and devoid of urgency. When asked why he hadn't reacted immediately, Austin offered a revealing explanation. He had assumed the message was an attempt by April to manipulate him emotionally. He believed she was trying to provoke concern and re-establish communication after their argument. This reasoning, while perhaps understandable in the context of a quarrel, struck investigators as cold and dismissive, given the situation's gravity. When pressed further about their quarrel, Austin struggled to provide specifics. He claimed that April's behavior had been inexplicable and that the argument arose out of the blue. He deflected blame, suggesting that April was the one responsible for their recent tensions. This, combined with his apparent apathy toward her distress call, reinforced detectives' doubts about him. In cases of violent crimes, it is frequently observed that partners or close acquaintances of the victim are statistically the most probable perpetrators. This understanding guided the investigators in their initial assessment of April's tragic death. Austin's behavior, coupled with his close proximity to April, naturally placed him under intense scrutiny. Law enforcement authorities made the decision to detain him for further interrogation, aiming to thoroughly examine his activities on the day April disappeared. Their objective was to construct a clear timeline and verify his alibi to determine if he had any involvement in the crime. Austin provided a detailed account of his whereabouts on the afternoon of April's disappearance. He stated that at approximately 4 p.m., he had met with a friend to assist in bringing a television into his home. After completing this task, they decided to grab a snack and proceeded to the nearest fast food cafe. This timeline of events appeared routine and uneventful, aligning with what one might expect on a typical day. To substantiate his claims, investigators meticulously reviewed the CCTV footage from the cafe. The footage confirmed Austin's presence at the establishment around 6:30 p.m., just minutes after April had sent the ominous message regarding an attempted kidnapping. This verification provided concrete evidence that Austin could not have been involved in April's murder, as his location was firmly established during the critical time frame. Despite the initial suspicions, the detectives were compelled to explore alternative avenues. However, certain aspects of Austin's behavior remained perplexing. His dismissive response to April's distressing text message and his apparent lack of urgency in comprehending the severity of the situation raised lingering questions. These inconsistencies highlighted the intricate and often convoluted nature of human relationships, which can obscure the path to uncovering the truth in complex criminal investigations. As the investigation advanced, it became increasingly apparent that April's death was not a straightforward case of passion-driven violence or a random act of brutality. This realization reinvigorated the investigative team, who committed themselves to exhaust every possible lead in their relentless pursuit of justice for April Millsap. With Austin definitively cleared of any involvement, the investigators redirected their focus to other potential leads. The next critical step was to locate and analyze April's mobile phone, which was believed to hold essential information that could unravel the mystery of her murder. The absence of her phone at the crime scene was particularly concerning, leading detectives to theorize that the perpetrator had deliberately taken it, likely disabling it to prevent any tracking and subsequently discarding it to eliminate evidence. The quest to find April's phone and gather additional evidence became a top priority for the investigative team. Forensic experts conducted exhaustive searches along the trails that April frequented, meticulously combing through areas where she might have wandered during her final moments. Specialized search units, including teams with trained dogs, were deployed to scour the dense vegetation and rugged terrain surrounding the ravine. The involvement of the FBI added a layer of expertise and advanced technological resources to the efforts, significantly enhancing the search operations. The search extended well into the following day, testing the endurance and determination of the investigators and volunteers alike. Just when hope seemed to wane, a breakthrough occurred. Approximately a kilometer from the original crime scene, searchers discovered April's mobile phone. The device was promptly sent to a forensic laboratory for detailed analysis, marking a pivotal moment in the investigation. The forensic examination of the phone yielded critical information that shed new light on the case. Investigators uncovered that April had been in regular contact with a school acquaintance named Roger. Roger, known for his abrasive personality and frequent run-ins, initially emerged as a potential suspect. However, further investigation revealed that Roger had a solid alibi for the time of the murder, corroborated by multiple reliable sources, thereby eliminating him from suspicion. As detectives continued to piece together the timeline and interview witnesses, a new lead surfaced. Several residents reported seeing a man on a motorcycle interacting with April shortly before her disappearance. Witnesses described the man as significantly older than April, pushing a blue and white motorcycle while walking alongside her. They appeared to be engaged in conversation, and at the time, his demeanor did not raise any immediate red flags. In fact, some witnesses even mistook him for April's father due to his calm and composed behavior. However, in the context of April's disappearance, the investigators began to question his intentions, considering the possibility that he might have had a role in the tragic event. The description of the motorcycle was specific and uncommon, a rare blue and white model. This unique feature allowed investigators to focus their efforts on tracking down the vehicle. 3 days after April's murder, on April 27, 2014, the motorcycle was located parked in the driveway of a local residence. The homeowner told police that the motorcycle did not belong to them. It was owned by a 32-year-old friend, James Van Callis, who lived in a neighboring town about 30 kilometers away from Armada. Investigators wasted no time in contacting James Van Callis. From the outset, James appeared cooperative and willing to answer the detectives' questions. He stated that on the day of April's murder, he had been visiting a friend in Armada and claimed to have spent the afternoon and evening there. His alibi was corroborated by his friend, but detectives remained skeptical. They knew the reliability of an alibi provided by a close associate could be compromised by loyalty or collusion. Inconsistencies in James's account began to emerge during further questioning. When asked about the shoes he wore on the day of the murder, James produced a pair of white sneakers. There were no bloodstains on the sneakers James Van Callis provided to detectives. Also, forensic analysis revealed that the tread pattern on the sneakers did not match the distinctive marks left on April's body. But the size was identical. This discrepancy immediately raised suspicions that these were not the sneakers he had been wearing on the day of April Millsap's murder. Detectives decided to delve deeper into James's history to determine whether he could be excluded from the list of potential suspects. What they uncovered painted a disturbing picture. James had a series of convictions, although none were for violent crimes. His criminal record included charges for breaking and entering in 2005 and 2006, as well as for non-payment of alimony. While these offenses suggested a disregard for the law, they did not align with the profile of a brutal murderer. However, when investigators broadened their inquiry to include his family background, they found something far more alarming. James's father, James Van Callis Sr., was a registered sex offender with a documented history of sexual assaults. During the period in question, both father and son lived in the same family house. This revelation raised the possibility that the elder Van Callis could also have been involved in criminal activities, or at the very least, contributed to a deeply troubled environment. The elder Van Callis had previously been accused of sexually harassing a minor, and his criminal record reflected a pattern of predatory behavior. Initially, investigators considered the possibility that both father and son could have been involved in criminal episodes. However, witness accounts from the day of April's murder pointed clearly to James Jr. Witnesses described the suspect as a middle-aged man who matched James Jr.'s description, making him the primary focus of the investigation. Searches conducted at the Van Callis residence uncovered additional incriminating evidence. Police found a substantial quantity of illegal plants growing on their property. The scale of the operation was significant enough to warrant drug distribution charges, which led to the arrest of both James and his father. This move served a dual purpose. It removed them as potential flight risks and gave authorities more time to investigate the murder without interference. Despite the thorough search of the house, police were unable to find the sneakers that matched the tread marks on April's body. Numerous DNA analyses were conducted on James's clothing and personal items, but no matches with April's DNA were found. Forensic experts who examined James's motorcycle, however, made a critical observation. It had been meticulously cleaned with strong disinfectants shortly before being taken into custody. This level of cleanliness was unusual and suggested a deliberate attempt to remove evidence. The lack of any residual traces further confirmed that James had gone to great lengths to cover his tracks. The detective's suspicions were bolstered when James's girlfriend, Crystal, contacted the police. Crystal provided chilling insights into James's behavior on the day of April's murder. She recalled returning home to find him obsessively cleaning his shoes, motorcycle, and helmet. The intensity of his efforts struck her as unusual, and the strong cleaning agents he used only deepened her concerns. Crystal also revealed that James had admitted to her that he was cleaning because he had gotten engine oil on his belongings while repairing his motorcycle, a claim she did not believe. Crystal's testimony included a key piece of evidence. She described the sneakers James had been wearing on the day of the murder. They were his favorite black and white sneakers, a pair she had seen him wear frequently. These shoes, however, did not match the ones he handed over to detectives during his initial questioning. Crystal also noted that after that night, she never saw those sneakers again. She suspected that James had disposed of them, realizing that they might link him to the crime. Crystal went on to detail her tumultuous relationship with James. She described him as cruel and controlling, with a violent temper that left her feeling like a prisoner in her own home. He restricted her movements, forbidding her from leaving the house without his accompaniment. She admitted that she had been afraid of him for a long time, fearing for her life if she ever defied him. Now, with James and his father detained, Crystal felt safe enough to speak candidly about her experiences. The police knew they needed to prove conclusively that James had been wearing the sneakers Crystal described. Their breakthrough came when they discovered photos on James's social media profiles. In several pictures, James could be seen wearing black and white sneakers identical to the ones Crystal had mentioned. While the original pair was no longer in his possession, detectives purchased an identical pair of sneakers from the same brand and compared the tread pattern to the marks found on April's body. The forensic analysis was definitive. The tread pattern of the replica sneakers matched the impressions left on April's body with absolute precision. This finding confirmed that the original pair of sneakers, James's favorite, had been used during the murder. April Millsap had been trampled to death by someone wearing those shoes, and all evidence pointed to James Van Callis as the perpetrator. The investigation took a darker turn as forensic experts revisited the helmet James had cleaned so thoroughly. The marks on April's head bore a striking resemblance to the contours of the helmet. It became increasingly clear that James had used the helmet as a weapon during the attack. This finding, combined with the tread marks and the circumstantial evidence, left no doubt in the minds of investigators. The case against James Van Callis was growing stronger, but it was also becoming a chilling reminder of the lengths to which he had gone to evade detection. His meticulous efforts to erase evidence, combined with his violent and controlling tendencies, painted the picture of a cold and calculating individual. The trail of evidence, painstakingly pieced together by detectives, was now leading inexorably toward justice for April Millsap. During a detailed examination of James Van Callis's computer, investigators uncovered evidence that confirmed their suspicions. His online activity revealed a disturbing interest in much younger women, with searches and website visits that left no doubt about his predatory tendencies. This revelation painted a clearer picture of his potential motive and the dark undercurrents of his personality. Even more crucial was the information obtained from April Millsap's mobile phone, analyzed in an FBI laboratory. Among the data recovered was a fitness app that April used regularly. This app recorded various parameters such as speed, steps, and heart rate. The data provided a chilling timeline of her final moments. Shortly after April sent the alarming message to her boyfriend Austin about an attempted kidnapping, her recorded speed increased dramatically. It was as if she had suddenly started running, likely trying to escape from someone pursuing her. Investigators pieced together the likely scenario. James Van Callis had driven up to April on his motorcycle, possibly offering her something or attempting to engage her in conversation. Sensing danger, April had texted Austin before attempting to flee. Within minutes, the fitness app recorded chaotic, erratic movements that reflected a desperate struggle. This activity continued for 10 to 15 harrowing minutes, capturing the heartbreaking reality of a woman fighting for her life. Tragically, the data also marked the moment when her struggle ended. Not long after, the app recorded another significant detail. The phone began moving at a steady speed of approximately 60 kilometers per hour, consistent with someone riding a motorcycle. This speed was maintained until the phone was discarded roughly a kilometer away from the scene of the attack. This action, investigators believed, was James's attempt to dispose of evidence while fleeing the area. Several surveillance cameras along the biker's route provided further incriminating evidence. The footage clearly showed James Van Callis on his motorcycle, and his movements aligned with the timeline established by the fitness app. Geolocation data from his mobile phone also placed him near the crime scene during the critical time frame, contradicting his earlier claim that he had been at a friend's house. With this evidence, investigators were confident they had identified April's killer. Despite the mounting case against him, there was a critical problem: the absence of direct evidence. Investigators lacked DNA linking James to the crime, a fact that his defense team would undoubtedly exploit. Forensic experts had scoured his belongings, including his motorcycle, helmet, and clothing, but found no traces of April's blood or DNA. The thorough cleaning of his items had effectively erased any physical evidence, underscoring James's calculated efforts to cover his tracks. Given these challenges, the prosecutor's office faced a difficult decision. Despite the indirect nature of the evidence, it was substantial and damning. The cumulative weight of the surveillance footage, geolocation data, fitness app records, and James's known predatory behavior painted a compelling picture. In October 2014, 3 months after April's murder, James Van Callis was formally charged. The trial was set for early 2016. The prosecution argued that James's actions were driven by a twisted motive. He had reportedly spent years searching the internet for methods of seduction, fixating on ways to attract much younger women. These searches revealed a man obsessed with his desires, unable to accept rejection. Prosecutors contended that April had rebuffed his advances, triggering a violent, rage-fueled attack. The evidence suggested that he had trailed April on his motorcycle, confronted her, and ultimately unleashed a brutal assault when she resisted. The defense, as expected, centered their argument on the lack of direct evidence. They pointed out that no DNA or physical traces connected James to April's murder. His lawyer argued that the prosecution's case relied entirely on circumstantial evidence, which, while compelling, could not irrefutably prove his guilt. The defense also highlighted James's relatively clean criminal record, emphasizing that he had never been convicted of a violent crime. Despite these efforts, the jury was unconvinced by the defense's arguments. The sheer volume of evidence against James, combined with the harrowing details of April's final moments, left little doubt in their minds. His actions on the day of the murder, his attempts to erase evidence, and his disturbing online activity painted a damning portrait of his culpability. Throughout the trial, James maintained his innocence, showing no remorse or acknowledgement of wrongdoing. His lack of contrition only deepened the outrage among April's family and the community. The aftermath of the trial brought a mix of emotions to April's family and community. While justice had been served, it could not undo the tragedy of her loss. To honor her memory, a memorial garden was established near the site where her life was cruelly taken. At its center stood a small statue of her beloved dog, Penny, who had led strangers to the place where April was found. The garden became a symbol of resilience and a reminder of the importance of vigilance in protecting the vulnerable. April Millsap's story remains a chilling reminder of the dangers that can lurk even in the safest of places. Her tragic death underscored the need for communities to stay vigilant and proactive in addressing threats, as well as the importance of fostering an environment where victims feel empowered to seek help. Her legacy lives on, not only in the memorial garden, but also in the hearts of those who continue to fight for justice in her name. After deliberating for several hours, the jury unanimously found him guilty of attempted kidnapping, rape, and premeditated murder. As a result, James Van Callis was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. April Millsap's mother spoke at length during the sentencing. The woman was satisfied with the court's decision and the fact that the criminal would never be released. She was shocked that a child could die at the hands of an adult man just because he was refused.